we're gonna do a little sound design. You'll see me using the Hacktribe a lot. It's only because it's cheap. It's one of my favorite pieces of gear for some reason. Just the more I use it, the more I like it. And now we have this hack, and to me, it's just gotten even better. But all that's to say, I really like the Hacktribe. It's cheap. It's got a lot of channels. It's got 16 channels, even though it only can do 24 operations. You know, it's got 16 channels, and if you're careful with your effects and you know how many notes you're playing, you can get a lot out of it. But today we're just gonna work on a little techno rumble because you know, I just discovered how to do it with a Hacktribe. I've been doing it and trying to do it with the OG firmware for a while now, and I could never get it to hit right. But I finally think I figured it a pretty good way out. It's kind of one of the older ways of doing it. If you look up tutorials on how to make a techno rumble now, usually you're going to be looking at, you know, anywhere from 2 to 3 layers. A lot of times, you know, they're going to have their kick, and then they're going to have either 1 layer of rumble that's going to have the whole thing, or they'll have like 2 layers that'll have like a low rumble and like a sort of mid like texture rumble, if you want to say. We're not really able to do that just because that specific sound is also sort of dependent on the same thing that a lot of sounds are now, and that's sort of like over processing, meaning, you know, just adding tons and tons of effects until you get the sound you want. And that's really just a computer concept. You know, we can't really do that with the Hacktribe sampler. We could, you know, if you want to spend hours resampling the same sample, you can definitely over process it. I still think you're probably going to end up with not necessarily the same result as something like Vital or Serum, because this thing is just not as hi-fi as that, right? And I think it has like CD quality audio, which is, you know, it's good, but and I think it's like what, 44.1 16-bit. So, you know, technically, if we want to, you know, be relative, this thing is kind of lo-fi. But all that to say is we have to do things differently than people who use computers, but we can still get things done if we study. What is a techno rumble? You know, like most techno is gonna have the 4 on the floor, right? Douche, 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 douche. You know, there's like 2 main kinds of techno that I hear, you know, floating around. You got your hard techno that's gonna have more of an 808 style, goosh, 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 right? That's gonna, then, you know, that's gonna be your gabber, your hardcore, all that sort of stuff. And then, you know, you got, I guess what we call like underground techno, deep techno. You know, I don't know, maybe more forms use this, but this kind uses what we would call a rumble. And basically what that is feeding your kick sound, or, you know, in our case, a similar sound to a kick, into spatial effects like a delay, or like, in our instance, we're going to be using the wet reverb, mostly because, in my opinion, it's like the only master effect. You know, there are delays that you can use and things like that, but I like reverb. It's the best reverb in this thing, and the rest of the effects, in my opinion, I really only like them if I'm gonna, you know, bake that effect into a sample, and I need to send multiple oscillators into that effect. You know, that'd be good for, you know, the master distortion or whatever, if I'm making some kind of noise base or something. But all that to say, today we're going to be using the reverb, and just like a couple of effects, one of which comes from the new hack. So we got our kick here. It's just a a TV 505 kick that I grabbed from Ableton. We got a tom. Again, just a 505 tom I grabbed from Ableton. If you buy one of these Electribes new, you get a copy of Ableton Lite. So I've been slumming it on Ableton Lite since 2015. All right, so we got our kick. See what it sounds like. It sounds like a 4-on-the-4 kick. All right, so now we got our tom. It sounds pretty cheesy in 80s right now, but just trust me, we're gonna work on it. Probably the first thing we're gonna want to do is sort of like pitch this thing down an octave, because we're kind of wanting it to mimic a bass drum hit, but we want it to be different than our bass drum, because otherwise it might sound like a little samey. We might get a little bit of phasing. We don't want that. So now we got, and that's sounding pretty low and spanky. So now the next thing we're gonna want to do is carve a little bit of the bass out of our rumble. This is pretty standard practice for any sound. You may not always have to do this with the samples that you choose, but in this case, if we don't cut some of the lows out, it's gonna poop all over our mix, and it's gonna sound really muddy and bad. So the first thing we want to do is grab our high pass and drive. This is one of the new effects that comes with the Hacktribe. It's really dope for this. It is really the secret sauce. Without this, I have never been able to make a convincing rumble. Okay, so we got the high pass as closed as it'll close, and we're just gonna work our way down until we get enough bass. We're not gonna open it all the way because we need some of that cut, but we're gonna just listen. You can hear it starting to get a little lower. And that's getting pretty close. And it sounds like it might be clipping a little bit, so let's like adjust the level. You can already hear that sort of has like a little bit of the push-pull that we're looking for. These two sounds, the kick and the rumble, they play off each other. They're in a modern typical techno mix, they're considered one instrument. So we're gonna send that to our reverb, right? And we're gonna see what that sounds like. Okay, yeah, starting to sound a little rumbly. We got our reverb tails, but you'll notice that now we got like those highs, and we don't want quite that much, because one, it's not gonna sound authentic like we want, but also we need to like cut out some space through the other instruments in the mix. We didn't really have to cut that much bass because there's not going to be any other instruments below this rumble. It's going to be our bass line. Basically, it's going to be our lowest instrument. We're going to have to carve a good bit of highs out of this to make room for everything else. So we're going to do just like we did. Just work our way down. Right? Ooh, and that's starting to sound good. See what I'm saying? That sounds like a rumble. That's what it's supposed to sound like. Okay. And again, normally the way that they would modern techno producers would get the sort of push and pull from this is they would, again, you know, split their kick into multiple outputs, and you know, they would have a delay on on you know, their rumble layers to get their push and pull, their their echo, because that's basically what we're simulating. Like if we had, you know, a gigantic system and a huge warehouse playing just a kick, we would naturally get that rumble from the reverb in the room. So that's the effect that we're sort of trying to simulate. So like when someone hears our techno song in their headphones, it sounds like they're in a warehouse, right? That's what we want. So we got to make this sound like delays. And it's really very simple. It's just, you know, we know that our kick is on the you know, the 1, 5, 9, and 13, right? We know. So that means that we just need to put our rumble on basically any other position. It doesn't matter too much. Well, I mean, you know, it does matter, but we're just gonna feel it out and see what it sounds like. You know, we can always just move those. It costs nothing. It's free. Okay, so the first thing I noticed is it's like a little loud, right? So let's just mess with the levels a little bit. And maybe cut some more of those highs. Maybe cut up a little bit of the resonance. Okay, so like a sort of, I mean, it's not a hidden feature because most of the resonance on most synthesizers do this, right? But cranking the resonance on most synthesizers sort of cuts a little bit of the bass. So we can sneak a little bit of that bass out of our rumble and maybe add like a little bit of harmonics as well. If we just crank our resonance a little bit. Maybe turn the level back down a little bit. I mean, like, you know, could you have a more complex rumble? Absolutely, man. But I'm gonna tell you this now. I haven't used this thing on, you know, the most gigantic systems, but I have played live shows with it, and let me tell you, this thing cranks out ludicrous bass, like to the point that you will want less. If this thing don't put out nothing else, it puts out bass. So, you know, you're hearing this rumble through like an iPhone mic right now, but I'm telling you, you throw this in a real system and you're probably going to find out that it's too loud, and and you're going to have to turn it down, and it's going to like vibrate your brain. But yeah, techno rumble. You know, let me throw a little jam together real quick. I'm not going to go through it and make this video even freaking longer than it already is, but let me just show you what it'll sound like. I mean, there you go. You know, probably not the best song you've ever heard, but I feel like it's a pretty good example of what a techno rumble should sound like. Maybe not a techno song, but you know, um, yeah, that's the basic idea. Like, comment, subscribe, or don't, I guess. Uh, Peace out.